They called her a thief. They dragged her faith through the mud. After decades of kindness, the woman who once gave everything to others now stood alone, moments away from a life sentence. But as the crowd watched in silence, the doors creaked open. 3 strangers entered, men whose faces she hadn't seen in years, and with them, the secret that would rewrite her fate forever. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's continue. Rain battered the cracked window pane of the small Georgia home, its rhythm blending with the faint hum of gospel music from a dusty radio. The smell of rain-soaked earth clung to the air, but inside, everything felt heavier, the kind of heaviness that settles in your bones when life keeps throwing punches you never saw coming. Martha Jefferson sat at her kitchen table, hands trembling over an unopened letter stamped with the state seal. The world outside might have been gray with rain, but the one inside her chest was darker still. For 62 years, she'd been the woman who fixed everything, the one who smiled through storms, who carried burdens that weren't her own. But that morning, she could feel something breaking inside her, a crack in her faith, in her belief that good hearts always won. She whispered, "Lord, please, not this." Her fingers tore open the envelope. The letter was short, cold, final. Notice of criminal indictment, State versus Martha Jefferson. Charge, financial fraud. The paper slipped from her hands. For a moment, there was no sound but the rain. Then her breath caught, a gasp so sharp it hurt. Financial fraud. Her? The community church's treasurer for 20 years, the woman who'd kept every receipt, every cent of donation money recorded by hand in her old green ledger. Someone had set her up. The phone rang, slicing through the silence. She stared at it like it was alive. When she finally picked it up, the voice on the other end was the sheriff's. "Miss Jefferson, you need to come down to the station. It's about the church account." As she drove through the slick streets toward the station, memories crowded her mind, not of the church, not of the accusations, but of them. 3 little boys. It was a night much like this one when she'd first found them, huddled together under a broken bus stop, clothes soaked through, their thin arms wrapped around each other for warmth. The oldest couldn't have been more than 12. The youngest looked barely 6. Their faces were hollow from hunger, eyes wide and wild with fear. She remembered stopping her old Chevy, stepping out into the rain, and wrapping her coat around all 3. "Lord, give me strength," she'd whispered. And somehow, she had found it. She'd taken them home, given them warm food, clean clothes, and a roof over their heads. They were strangers when they came in, but within weeks, they became her sons in every way that mattered. To the neighborhood, they were Martha's boys. To her, they were a gift she hadn't known she'd been praying for. Those boys grew up in that little house, fixing fences, attending church, eating her cornbread, and sitting on the porch as she hummed hymns at sunset. Then life scattered them, one into business suits and skyscrapers, one into hospitals and healing hands, one into a badge and blue uniform. She hadn't heard from them in years. But now, as the wipers brushed away the rain, Martha whispered into the quiet car, "Where are my boys now?" The sheriff met her with a solemn look. "Martha, I'm sorry to do this to you," he said. "The evidence points straight to your name. Someone's been transferring money from the church's charity fund into a personal account, and it's under your signature." Her jaw tightened. "That's impossible." "I know," he said softly, "but the state's already pressing charges." He handed her a file, and when she opened it, she saw her own name printed beneath rows of numbers and transactions she didn't recognize. $25,000 missing. Her hands began to tremble again. "This is a mistake." The sheriff sighed. "Get yourself a good lawyer, Martha. I'll help however I can." When she walked out into the rain again, she didn't feel the drops. She only felt the weight. At home, she sank to the floor by her worn Bible. "I gave my life to serving others," she whispered. "And this is how it ends." The house was too quiet. And in that silence, one haunting question filled the room. Have you ever given everything to love, only to be repaid with pain? Viewers, if you were in Martha's shoes, accused of something you didn't do after years of helping others, would you still believe kindness comes back around? She wept until she had no tears left. That night, as lightning flickered through the window, she took out an old shoebox from under her bed. Inside were 3 small photographs. The first, Derek, dressed sharp in a tailored suit, smiling in front of a downtown office tower. The second, Caleb, wearing his white doctor's coat, a stethoscope around his neck, hope shining in his eyes. The third, Micah, standing proud in his police uniform, the golden badge gleaming against his chest. Her boys. Her blessings. And though years had passed since she'd last seen them, Martha looked at their faces and whispered, "If I ever needed you, it's now." Before the night that changed everything, Martha Jefferson's life was simple, quiet to the point of lonely. She'd been a widow for more than a decade, and though her house was full of warmth and faith, it echoed with the silence of dreams she once had, a husband's laughter, a baby's cry, a family that never came to be. In the mornings, she baked sweet rolls for the church breakfast, and in the evenings, she watched the sun sink behind the pecan trees, humming the same hymn her mama used to sing. "His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me." But even faith, strong as hers, can tremble under loneliness. There were nights when the radio played soft blues and she'd whisper, "Lord, I've got so much love and nowhere to put it." He must have heard her. The rain that night came down like judgment. Thunder rolled across the Georgia sky as Martha drove home from church, her headlights slicing through the mist. She was carrying a basket of leftover food for the shelter when she saw them, three small shapes beneath a bus stoplight, huddled together in the downpour. At first, she thought it was trash blowing in the wind. But as she slowed the car, she saw the smallest one raise his head, his eyes reflecting fear and hunger. Her heart stopped. She pulled over, stepped out into the storm, and shouted, "Hey, you boys okay out here?" No answer. Only the hiss of rain. She approached slowly, hands open, voice gentle. "You got someplace to go?" The oldest finally spoke. "No, ma'am." His voice cracked, polite, even now. "How old are you, sweetheart?" 12. "And the others?" "Caleb's 9. Micah's 6. "Where's your mama or daddy?" He looked away. "Don't got none no more." Lightning flashed. Martha could see their thin arms and soaked clothes. Every motherly instinct in her body screamed to protect them. "Get in the car," she said softly but firmly. "You're coming home with me." The oldest hesitated. "You don't even know us." Martha smiled through tears. "Baby, I don't need to. I can see God does." By the time they reached her house, the storm had swallowed the town. She hurried them inside, wrapped each in towels, and set out steaming bowls of soup. The youngest, Micah, kept glancing at her like she might disappear. The middle boy, Caleb, said a quiet thank you before eating. And Derek, the oldest, didn't touch his food at first. He just stared at it, as if unsure whether it was really his. Martha noticed his hesitation and said gently, "Food don't ask questions, sugar. You eat while it's warm." That night, the boys fell asleep in the living room, cocooned in blankets that smelled faintly of lavender. Martha stood over them and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for sending them to me. Give me strength to keep them safe." She didn't know how she'd do it. She only knew she must. The weeks that followed were not easy. Derek woke from nightmares screaming. Caleb had fevers that came and went. Micah cried whenever Martha left the room. But she met every tear, every fear, with patience and prayer. Slowly, laughter began to return to the house, cautious at first, then full and bright. Derek started helping her fix things around the house. He learned to hammer nails and paint fences, and when he made a mistake, Martha would chuckle. "Baby, it ain't broken, it's learning." Caleb, gentle by nature, would sit beside her in the garden, asking questions about the flowers. "Why you like the marigolds best?" he once asked. "They're stubborn," she smiled. "They bloom even in bad soil." Micah, restless and bold, was always running through the yard pretending to be a superhero or a cop. "I'm gonna protect you forever, Mama Martha," he'd shout, hands on his hips. She'd laugh. "Then I guess I'm in good hands, Officer Micah." Time moved gently but surely. Martha enrolled the boys in school. The church rallied around her, though some whispered, "Why's she taking in strangers? Ain't her blood." She ignored them. "Love don't need matching skin or kin," she'd say. "It just needs roots." The boys flourished under her care. Derek grew into a responsible young man, driven and focused. He got his first part-time job at 16, saving every dollar for college. Caleb was the heart of the trio, always the one patching scraped knees, sharing his lunch, staying late to help others. "You got healer's hands," Martha would tell him. Micah was the wild spirit, mischievous, bold, full of fire. He tested her patience more than the others, but he also defended his brothers fiercely. "You three got something special," Martha often said at dinner. "The world will test it, but don't let it break." Her words stuck. When Derek graduated high school with honors, the whole church celebrated. He went on to study business management, determined to make something of himself. Caleb followed a few years later, earning a scholarship to medical school. And Micah, true to his promise, joined the police academy. Martha watched them go one by one, proud but aching inside. Her house grew quiet again, but this time it was the good kind of quiet, the sound of prayers answered. Every Sunday, she'd set 3 extra plates at her table. Even when they couldn't come home, she kept their chairs waiting. Her neighbors would ask, "Why you keep setting those plates, Miss Jefferson?" She'd smile. Because love always finds its way back home. Years passed, and life moved on. The boys became men, hard-working, honest, grateful. Derek climbed the corporate ladder in Atlanta, sharp in his suits but still calling her every Sunday. Caleb became a beloved doctor at a community clinic, treating everyone regardless of their wallet. Micah wore his badge with pride, protecting the same kind of children they once were. Martha's heart swelled with pride. But behind her joy, she never stopped worrying. Because love like hers, deep, unguarded, always feared loss. And somewhere in the shadows of her small town, someone else had noticed her too closely. Someone who envied her trust and planned to use it against her. It started as an ordinary morning, sunlight spilling through lace curtains, the smell of biscuits baking in the oven, and gospel music whispering from Martha's radio. She hummed softly as she flipped the biscuits, her old hand steady from years of ritual. On the table sat her open Bible, a few church papers, and a cup of coffee she'd reheated twice already. There was peace in her routine, the kind that comes when you've learned to live gently with time. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps. Firm. Official. She froze. When she opened the door, 2 men in gray suits stood on her porch, raincoats draped over their arms. Behind them, a police car idled by the curb. "Mrs. Martha Jefferson?" one asked. "Yes, that's me. I'm Agent Hollins with the Georgia Department of Financial Investigations. This is Agent Price. We have a warrant to search your property and collect church records." Martha blinked. What for?" "An investigation into missing charity funds." Her heart skipped. "You must be mistaken." But the man was already unfolding the papers. "We have authorization from the district court," he said gently, almost apologetically. "Please, ma'am, step aside." In less than an hour, her kitchen was filled with strangers, officers, agents, all rifling through drawers and boxes. They took her ledgers, her checkbooks, even the stack of donation envelopes she'd been sorting for Sunday. Martha sat stiffly at the table, clutching her rosary. When the sheriff, her old friend, arrived, she looked up with pleading eyes. "Tom, tell them this is nonsense. You know me." He sighed, hat in hand. "Martha, they found a bank account under your name. Funds moved there from the church over the past 6 months." "That's impossible. I don't even bank online. I write checks." "I know," he whispered. "But the signatures match yours exactly." Her stomach twisted. "Then someone forged it." Agent Hollins looked up. "Ma'am, that's what we're here to find out. Until then, we have to treat you as a person of interest." Person of interest. The words hit harder than thunder. By evening, word had spread through the town. Whispers. Looks. Half sympathetic, half suspicious. At the grocery store, the cashier, a woman Martha had known since Sunday school, hesitated before taking her check. At church the next morning, the pews shifted when she entered. The pastor greeted her, but his smile was thin. After service, Deacon Wilson approached her gently. "Sister Martha, perhaps it's best you step down as treasurer until things clear up." She stared at him, tears stinging her eyes. "Step down? I've been serving this church since before you had gray in your beard." "I know, but the congregation is uneasy. You understand." She nodded, because she always understood. But inside, something broke. That night, she sat alone at her table, surrounded by silence and unpaid bills. Then the mail slot clinked. Another letter. Another blow. This one was from the bank, confirming the closure of a savings account under her name, balance withdrawn completely. The signature looked exactly like hers. She traced it with her finger, heart pounding. "This ain't mine," she whispered. "Somebody's copying me." Her mind ran through possibilities. Who could have access? Who might hold a grudge? Who could forge her handwriting? Then she remembered something. A month ago, the church's new accountant had insisted on modernizing the records, digitizing everything, collecting signatures for scanning. Martha's eyes narrowed. Oh Lord, what if? She reached for her phone. Her hands shook as she dialed the first number she could think of. "Derek, honey, it's Mama Martha." "Mama Martha?" His voice came through warm but tired, the city noise buzzing behind him. "It's been a minute. Everything okay?" I'm in a bit of trouble, baby." "What kind of trouble?" She hesitated, shame crawling up her throat. "The police came. They say money's missing from the church fund. They think I took it." There was silence. Then Derek's voice sharpened. "They what? That's insane. I swear, I don't know what's happening. I need someone who knows about business. You work with banks, don't you?" "I do," he said, already grabbing his keys. "Don't you worry. I'll drive down tonight." If someone you love was accused of a crime you know they'd never commit, would you drop everything to help them, or wait until you had all the facts? Tell us below, what kind of loyalty would you show? By the time Derek's car rolled into Willow Lane, dawn had barely touched the sky. The porch light still glowed faintly against the gray mist, just like it had when he was a boy coming home past curfew. Martha stood in the doorway, robe wrapped tight, eyes swollen from crying. When Derek saw her, he stopped for a moment, because despite the years, she looked exactly the same, strong, dignified, holding the world together with tired hands and stubborn grace. "Mama Martha," he whispered, stepping forward. She smiled weakly. "You drove all night?" "For you? Always." They embraced, long and silent, the kind of hug that doesn't need words. Then Derek gently pulled back. "Tell me everything." Inside, the kitchen table was covered with papers, bank statements, letters, and notes scribbled on sticky pads. Derek studied them carefully, frowning. "They used your signature to open this account. Whoever did it had access to your personal documents." "I keep all my church papers in the desk at the office," Martha said. "Anyone could have seen them. The new accountant, Deacon Wilson, even the choir girls when they drop off forms." Derek nodded slowly. "Do you trust this new accountant?" She hesitated. "He's polite. Young fella, eager to help. But something about him always felt off." "What's his name?" "Eli Barnes." Derek's pen paused mid-note. "I'll look him up." He took a deep breath. "Mama Martha, we're going to get through this. But you can't face this alone. You'll need a lawyer, and we'll need to gather proof you didn't touch that money." Her lips quivered. "You really think people will believe me?" "I don't care what they believe. I know the truth." That same morning, as Martha sat by the window, her phone buzzed again, a name she hadn't seen in years, Caleb. She answered, voice trembling. "Caleb, baby?" "Mama Martha." His tone was full of shock and worry. "I just saw the news online. They're saying you're under investigation? Is it true?" "It's complicated, son." "Where are you?" "At home. I'm coming down this weekend. Don't you talk to no lawyers until I get there. You hear me? We'll figure this out together." Before she could respond, another beep cut through, another incoming call. "Micah." She switched lines. "Micah." "Ma'am, what's going on? My captain just told me there's an alert out with your name in it." His voice cracked, the tough tone of a police officer slipping away. "Please tell me this is some kind of mistake." "It is, baby. It surely is." He exhaled, relief and rage mixing. "Good. Because if anyone's framing you, I'm gonna find them myself. Don't you get in trouble for me, Micah." Mama Martha, he said softly, you raised 3 fighters. We're not letting anyone hurt you. 2 days later, the little house that had once held 3 scared boys was full again, not with fear this time, but with purpose. Derek sat at the table surrounded by laptops and printed records. Caleb brewed coffee and made lists. Micah paced by the window, badge glinting under the light. Martha watched them with quiet awe. My boys, she murmured, her voice breaking. Look at you, all grown and still under my roof. Micah grinned. Feels like old times. Except this time, Derek said, tapping a folder, we're the ones protecting her. They worked late into the night. Derek tracked transactions through public databases. Caleb reviewed Martha's old medical and tax records to prove she couldn't have handled the forged documents. Micah called in favors from his precinct to run background checks on Eli Barnes. At 2 a.m., Derek looked up. Got something. They all leaned in. Eli Barnes, he said, was fired from 2 previous jobs for accounting discrepancies. But guess what? Both cases were quietly settled. Caleb frowned. So he's done this before. And he's smart about it, Derek added. Uses other people's information to cover his tracks. Micah slammed his fist lightly against the table. Then we find proof and clear her name. Martha's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what I did to deserve you 3. You loved us when no one else would, Caleb said softly. Now it's our turn. As dawn broke, Micah returned from a quick visit to the church. He placed a small flash drive on the table. Security cameras, he said. They keep recordings from the office. Derek plugged it in. Static at first, then a clear image appeared. There was Eli, late at night, sitting at Martha's desk. He was scanning documents, glancing over his shoulder, copying signatures from her old donation forms. Martha gasped. That's him. That's my desk. Caleb leaned forward. Pause that, there's a timestamp. 2 days before the first missing transfer. Derek's jaw tightened. That's all we need. He turned to Martha. We'll take this to your lawyer first thing in the morning. Martha pressed a hand to her heart. Thank you, Lord. For the first time in weeks, Martha slept peacefully. Her boys were home. But outside, the rain had started again, gentle for now, but steady. And as the thunder rolled in the distance, none of them knew that Eli Barnes had already realized the flash drive was missing, and he wasn't about to go down quietly. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, but inside Martha's home the air still felt heavy, tense with both fear and purpose. The kitchen table, once reserved for family dinners and Sunday devotionals, had become their headquarters. Stacks of folders, receipts, and printed emails sat where pies and biscuits once cooled. Derek had barely slept. His laptop glowed in front of him, lines of financial data scrolling across the screen. Caleb sat beside him, taking notes with a doctor's neat precision. Micah stood near the window, arms crossed, eyes scanning the street. They looked like a team, each in his own rhythm, each with a different kind of fire in his chest. Martha watched from her chair with quiet pride, though her hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee. You boys eat something, she said softly. Can't fight battles on an empty stomach. Derek looked up briefly, smiling. You still worry more about us than yourself. Old habits, she said. And love don't change. He nodded. Neither does loyalty. By mid-morning, Derek's screen filled with names and dates. There, see this, he pointed. These transactions go through a secondary account, a dummy company registered under Barnes and Associated Accounting. It's a shell, and it's tied to a P.O. box in Atlanta. Caleb leaned in. So he's been funneling donations through fake charities. Exactly. And the account that's supposedly in Mama Martha's name? That's where he launders the money before moving it to himself. Clever, but not clean. Micah pulled out his phone. I'll get a warrant to check that P.O. box. Derek frowned. You sure that's wise? If he's dangerous. I'm a cop, Micah said simply. And he messed with the wrong family. Martha looked at him sharply. Micah, don't you go doing anything reckless. You hear me? He softened. Yes, ma'am. Just checking leads. Nothing stupid. But his eyes said otherwise. While the boys worked, Martha found herself drifting toward her prayer room, a small corner of her bedroom where she kept a Bible, a candle, and framed photos of the boys at different ages. She knelt slowly, her knees aching, her heart full. "Lord," she whispered, "I've seen storms before, but this one feels different. I can handle shame, I can handle struggle, but please don't let my boys get hurt because of me." The candle flickered. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled faintly, or maybe that was just her imagination. When she returned to the kitchen, Caleb looked up from his papers. "You okay, Mama?" She smiled faintly. "I'm fine, baby. Just talking to someone who still listens." Caleb reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then he's probably proud of you." That afternoon, the front door rattled with sharp knocks. Micah, hand instinctively on his holster, opened it cautiously. It was Deacon Wilson, flanked by 2 other church members. Their faces were stiff, polite, but distant. "Martha," the deacon began, "we wanted to check in. The congregation's worried. This situation with the authorities, it's causing division." "I understand," Martha said quietly. "But I didn't take that money." "I know you say that," he replied, "but appearances matter. Maybe it's best if you don't attend services until this blows over." Micah stepped forward, jaw tightening. "You throwing her out of the church she built?" The deacon flinched. "Son, this is between grown folks." "Then act like it," Micah snapped. Martha raised a trembling hand. "Enough. If staying home brings peace, I'll stay home." The deacon nodded awkwardly. "We're praying for you." When they left, silence filled the room. Caleb shook his head. "Praying for you, but not standing by you. Some faith." Martha whispered, "Don't blame them. People get scared when they can't see the truth. I've learned to forgive that." Her words were soft, but they broke something in her son's. Later that evening, Derek found something odd buried in a batch of emails Martha had printed. "Wait," he said, scrolling. "Here's a message supposedly sent by you to the church's donors, thanking them for direct wire transfers. You ever write this?" Martha frowned. "No. I wouldn't even know how to send that." He tapped the keyboard. "It's fake, but whoever wrote it used your phrasing. I can almost hear your voice in it." Caleb leaned closer. How would he know how she talks? Martha's brow furrowed. "He was at the house once. Said he needed to collect some receipts I'd left behind. I was cooking dinner. He sat right there, talking about how much he admired my old school ways. I thought he was just being kind." Micah's eyes darkened. "He was studying you. Picking up your mannerisms, your words, to forge emails that sound like you." Derek exhaled slowly. "He's smart. But we're smarter." Just as they were about to call the lawyer, there came a soft ping from Derek's laptop. An email. Subject line, "Stop digging, or she goes down for real." The message had no sender name, no signature, only a single attachment, a photo of Martha leaving the church office, time-stamped to make it look like she was there on the night Eli forged the documents. Caleb's heart sank. "He's watching us." Micah clenched his fists. "He's trying to scare us." Martha stood very still. "Let him. I've been scared before. It passes." Derek's voice was steady. "He made a mistake sending this. We can trace it." He began typing furiously. "Every message leaves a trail, even fake ones." Micah nodded grimly. "Then let's follow it." The glow of Derek's laptop painted the room in cold blue light. The others leaned close as he traced the digital footprints behind the threatening email. "Here," he murmured, fingers flying over the keys. He masked the address through 2 proxy servers, but he slipped. The origin traces back to a small-town library network, the one near the church. Micah grinned tightly. "Perfect. That's my jurisdiction." "Hold on," Caleb cautioned. "If he's desperate, he could be dangerous." Micah looked up. "Then he'll meet someone who's not afraid of him." Martha, sitting quietly by the window, said softly, "Micah, remember, justice ain't revenge. Promise me you won't forget that." He nodded. "I promise, Mama Martha. But I will make sure he never hurts you again." That evening, under a dimming sky, Micah drove to the small public library 2 blocks from the church. The building was almost empty except for the librarian and a janitor sweeping the floor. He showed his badge. "Ma'am, did anyone use the public computers around 6 p.m. yesterday?" She frowned, checking her logbook. "Let me see, yes, someone named Eli Barnes. Said he needed to print donation forms for the church." Micah's pulse quickened. "Can I see the camera footage?" Within minutes, he watched the grainy feed, Eli sitting at a computer, typing furiously, glancing around before slipping a flash drive into the machine. Micah copied the footage onto his phone, thanked the librarian, and stepped outside. That's when he noticed the car parked across the street. Black. Windows tinted. Engine running. His instincts kicked in. He approached slowly, hand near his sidearm, but as he got closer, the car sped off, tires screeching against the asphalt. He tried to catch the plate, but the rain had blurred it. Micah muttered, "Coward." When he got home, the house lights were dim, Martha and Caleb asleep on the couch, Derek still at the table, reading financial reports. Micah handed him the phone. "Got the footage." "It's him. No doubt." "Good," Derek said, relief flashing in his eyes. "This seals it." They didn't notice the faint movement outside the window. A shadow. Watching. Later that night, as the brothers discussed next steps, a knock came, soft, hesitant. Martha stirred. Who could that be at this hour? Micah peered through the peephole. A woman stood there, thin, soaked from the rain, eyes full of guilt. He opened the door carefully. "Ma'am." She clutched a folder. "My name's Hannah. I used to work for Eli Barnes." Martha's breath caught. "Come in, child. You're freezing." Hannah stepped inside, trembling. "I couldn't keep quiet anymore. He told me to create fake receipts. Said it was just a formality for the audits. But then I saw your name on the transfer forms." Caleb's voice softened. "He forged all of them using Martha's credentials?" She nodded, tears spilling. "Yes. And he said if anyone found out, he'd make sure the blame landed on her, that no one would believe an old woman over a man with degrees and charm." Martha closed her eyes, whispering, "Lord have mercy." Hannah handed over the folder. "Everything's in here, copies, signatures, and even a voice recording I made when he bragged about it." Micah looked at her with gratitude. "You just gave us the weapon we need." By morning, Derek had organized all the evidence, the video, the voice clip, the transaction trail. Caleb arranged a meeting with Martha's lawyer, while Micah sent an anonymous copy to the local police department's internal affairs. They knew the storm was coming, and they were ready. But Eli was faster. At noon, Martha received another letter, this time, hand-delivered. It was short. "You think you've won. You haven't. I still have friends in high places, people who need this to go away. Be smart, Martha. Plead guilty. Take the deal. Or I'll make those boys of yours pay the price." Her hands shook as she read it aloud. Micah's face darkened. "He's threatening us now." Caleb took the letter, scanning it carefully. The tone's desperate. He knows he's cornered. Derek nodded. "That's when liars get dangerous." Martha's voice trembled, but her eyes held steel. "Then we don't hide. We bring everything to light. In public. Let the whole town see." That Sunday, instead of staying home, Martha put on her best church hat, bright blue, the one she hadn't worn in years. Her sons flanked her as they walked up the church steps, heads high. The congregation went silent. Deacon Wilson blinked in shock. "Martha, you shouldn't be here." "I should be exactly here," she said, her voice steady. "This house of God taught me truth conquers lies. So I came to remind it." She turned toward the crowd. "You all think I stole from the Lord. But I didn't. And today you'll see who did." At the back of the church, Eli Barnes froze. Micah stepped forward, holding up his phone. "Meet the real thief," he said, and pressed play. The recording filled the sanctuary, Eli's voice, smug and careless. "She'll never suspect a thing. Sweet old Martha's too blind to see I've been using her signature for months." Gasps erupted. Some people stood. Others covered their mouths. Eli bolted toward the door, but Micah was faster. He caught him by the arm. Going somewhere? Eli's face turned pale. The sheriff stepped forward from the crowd, the same one who'd once looked at Martha with pity. This time, his voice was firm. Eli Barnes, you're under arrest. As they led Eli away, Martha sank slowly into a pew, tears streaming down her face. Caleb knelt beside her, holding her hands. It's over, Mama. She shook her head gently. Not yet. But it's beginning to be. Derek smiled faintly. You did it. You stood up when they tried to silence you. She looked at each of them, her 3 sons, once lost boys, now men who had become her shield. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled fully. No, my loves. We did it. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, light pouring through stained glass, scattering color across her tear-streaked face. It felt like Grace returning home. The news spread through town like wildfire. Eli Barnes arrested in church embezzlement scandal. Each headline felt like a small victory for Martha Jefferson, but the war wasn't over. The district attorney wanted Martha to testify in open court to prove her innocence and describe how Eli had used her identity. The thought terrified her. I ain't been in a courtroom since my husband's funeral papers, she whispered as her lawyer slid a stack of documents across the table. Caleb reached for her hand. You won't be alone, Mama. Micah nodded. I'll be right behind you in uniform. Everyone will see the truth. Derek sat quietly, jaw set. We just need to make sure there aren't any surprises. The lawyer sighed. Mr. Barnes is claiming he was set up by someone else in the church. He says he was following orders. Martha blinked. What orders? He won't say yet, the lawyer answered. He's saving it for trial. The room fell silent. That evening, as Martha sat on her porch watching the sunset, a car pulled up slowly to the curb. Out stepped Deacon Wilson. He approached hesitantly, hat in hand. Martha, may I sit? She nodded stiffly. What brings you by, Deacon? You come to apologize for turning your back. His eyes softened. I came to warn you. Warn me. He glanced around nervously. There are people in that church who don't want the trial to happen. Eli wasn't working alone. Martha stiffened. You knew something. He looked pained. I suspected. But when I asked questions, they threatened to ruin me too. You think I'm a coward, but you don't know the kind of money we're talking about. It didn't just come from donations. It came from real estate deals, political funds, money the pastor himself was funneling through the church. Martha gripped the arm of her chair. Pastor Leroy. Deacon Wilson nodded slowly. He used Eli to wash it clean. When you started asking about the numbers last year, they decided you had to take the fall. Her heart hammered. That man baptized my babies. I'm sorry, Martha. But if you go to court, he'll make sure you don't walk out of there free. Martha looked him straight in the eye. Then I'll walk in with my head high. Truth ain't afraid of the light. When she told the boys what Deacon Wilson had revealed, the room erupted. Micah paced furiously. I knew that man was too slick for his own good. Derek said coldly, this changes everything. Eli wasn't just a scam artist, he was a pawn. Caleb rubbed his forehead. If the pastor was involved, we need proof, not rumors. Derek stood. Then we get it. Micah, can you pull the pastor's financial records? I'll try, Micah said, already reaching for his phone. But it has to be off the books. If Internal Affairs finds out, I'm suspended. Martha stepped forward. No. I won't let you risk your career for me. Micah met her gaze. You risked your life for us 30 years ago. I can risk a badge. She didn't argue, she just nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Over the next few days, the brothers dived deeper into the records than ever before. Derek used his corporate connections to trace nonprofit tax filings. Caleb contacted a friend in medical charity circles to compare donor lists. Micah worked quietly in the background, pulling permits and land records from the city's database. And then he found it, a property on the edge of town purchased under a dummy organization called Grace Revival Ministries, Inc. The signatory? Pastor Leroy Thomas. Micah showed the document to Derek. He used church money to buy land in his own name. Then Eli Barnes transferred donations through the same accounts. Derek's jaw tightened. He's the mastermind. They printed everything, records, receipts, property titles, and brought them to Martha. When she saw the pastor's signature, her hands shook. I can't believe it. All those years of trust, of calling him shepherd. And he was feeding on his flock the whole time. Caleb said gently, Mama, sometimes evil wears a collar and smiles from a pulpit. She bowed her head. I won't let bitterness win. But I will let truth be heard. Would you confront someone you've trusted for decades if you found they'd betrayed you, even if it risked your faith community? Share below. Truth and loyalty can test the heart in ways few ever see. The courthouse smelled of varnished wood and old paper, that sharp, cold scent of judgment and truth colliding. Martha sat at the defense table, her floral dress neatly pressed, her Bible clutched in trembling hands. The three boys, now men, sat directly behind her, solid as stone. Eli Barnes was brought in wearing a suit far too nice for his crimes. His face was smooth, his hair trimmed, but the smirk never left. When he glanced back and saw the three men sitting behind Martha, the smirk faltered for just a second. The courtroom buzzed as the trial began. The prosecutor painted Eli as a cunning thief who used an innocent woman's trust. The defense attorney, desperate to deflect, pointed a finger back at the church, hinting at a larger conspiracy. And then Eli took the stand. He began calm, rehearsed. I take full responsibility for my actions, he said smoothly. But I wasn't acting alone. The courtroom murmured. Who else was involved, Mr. Barnes? The prosecutor asked. Eli leaned forward, eyes glinting. Pastor Leroy Thomas, and someone very close to Mrs. Jefferson. Martha's head snapped up. What? He looked straight at her. Your son. Derek. Gasps filled the room. Derek shot to his feet. That's a lie. The judge banged the gavel. Order. Eli continued, voice dripping with false sympathy. Derek Jefferson helped me set up the shell companies. He knew how to manipulate business accounts. I couldn't have done it without him. Martha turned slowly toward Derek, confusion and disbelief etched across her face. Baby. Derek's voice cracked. He's lying, Mama. I swear. Eli smiled. Check the records. His name's on one of the incorporation filings. The prosecutor frowned, flipping through documents. Your Honor, we do have a record of someone named D. Jefferson listed as a witness on the Grace Revival Ministries registration. The air thickened. Martha's chest tightened as she clutched her rosary. Oh Lord. Caleb whispered, that can't be. He'd never. Micah cut him off, eyes blazing. He didn't. I know my brother. But Derek sat motionless, eyes distant. I remember that form, he murmured. He asked me to sign something once, said it was for a grant application for the church expansion. Realization hit him like a freight train. He used me. For the first time, the courtroom seemed to close in around them. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed. The defense attorney smirked, sensing a crack. So, Mrs. Jefferson, your family helped Mr. Barnes without knowing it? Martha's voice trembled. We didn't help him. We were fooled, like everyone else. But the whispering audience had already decided otherwise. During recess, they gathered in the hallway. Derek's hands shook as he ran them through his hair. He used my signature. Again. I should have seen it. Micah clapped a hand on his shoulder. This ain't on you. Caleb nodded. We'll prove it. We've come too far to stop now. Martha, however, sat quietly, eyes clouded with hurt. Micah knelt before her. Mama, you believe him, don't you? She looked up slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. I do. But it breaks my heart that someone could use my boys to hurt me. Derek whispered, I'm sorry. She reached out and touched his face gently. Don't you dare apologize for being kind. Evil counts on kindness not looking too close. That's how it sneaks in. As they prepared for the next day, a new visitor appeared in the courthouse hallway, the same Deacon Wilson who had warned them earlier. He carried a small, worn notebook. I couldn't live with myself, he said quietly. The pastor made me keep 2 sets of ledgers. One real, one fake. The real one proves where every dollar went. He handed it to Derek. If anything happens to me, make sure this gets to the DA. Caleb flipped through the book. These are handwritten, with signatures. Even dates match the transfers. Micah nodded. It's solid. Martha took the notebook and held it close to her chest. God bless you, Deacon. You just brought light to a dark room. The next morning, the courtroom filled again. This time, Derek requested to testify. He stood tall, hands steady, voice clear. Yes, I signed a document for Pastor Leroy. He told me it was a grant for youth programs. I had no reason to doubt a man I grew up calling pastor. But I never took a dime. What I did was trust, and trust can be a dangerous thing in the wrong hands. Then Martha rose slowly. Your Honor, I have something to submit. The defense objected, but the judge allowed it. Martha handed over the deacon's notebook. These are the true ledgers. And if you check the handwriting, you'll find who wrote every false entry, Pastor Leroy Thomas. The judge called for a recess while investigators verified the records. Hours later, when court resumed, the prosecutor stood and announced, the notebook is authentic. Pastor Thomas was taken into custody this morning. The crowd erupted. Eli's face went pale. He promised. But his words were drowned in the gavel's echo. Martha closed her eyes, whispering, Thank you, Lord. Micah put an arm around her. Caleb squeezed her hand. Derek exhaled deeply, a tear slipping free. Justice, slow bruising but real, had finally started to move. The prosecutor turned to the judge. Your Honor, with this evidence, we request all charges against Mrs. Jefferson be dropped immediately. The judge nodded. So ordered. Applause rippled through the courtroom as Martha wept openly, her boys surrounding her in a circle of love that no lie could break. Freedom came quietly. There were no brass bands or parades, just the sound of the courthouse door creaking open as Martha Jefferson stepped into sunlight for the first time as a cleared woman. Reporters swarmed around her, shouting questions, but her mind felt distant, hollowed out by exhaustion. Caleb shielded her with one arm. No statements today, he said firmly. Derek flagged a taxi. Micah stood by the curb, eyes scanning the crowd like a sentry. Inside the car, Martha pressed a hand to her chest. I thought I'd feel light, she murmured. But I just feel tired. Caleb gave her a sad smile. That's what happens when you fight too long, Mama. Even victory hurts. The city blurred past. Streets, buildings, memories. Every stoplight felt like a heartbeat reminding her she was alive, even if she wasn't sure why she still felt heavy. When they reached home, Martha went straight to the kitchen. The house was exactly as she'd left it, pictures crooked from when the police had searched, drawers still half emptied. She picked up a broken teacup from the counter and turned it in her hand. It had been her husband's favorite, cracked now but still whole enough to hold shape. She whispered, I suppose that's me too. Derek began cleaning without a word. Caleb opened windows to let sunlight in. Micah unpacked groceries. He'd stocked up as if preparing for battle, which in a way he was. They tried to talk, but conversation stumbled over fatigue. Eventually, Martha excused herself and went to her room. For the first time in decades, the house was quiet, too quiet. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the photograph on the nightstand. 3 small boys grinning through missing teeth, arms around each other, standing in front of the old community center she'd once run. She could still remember that night 30 years ago when she'd found them huddled behind the church dumpster, skinny, cold, terrified. She'd promised God she'd never let them go hungry again. And now those boys had saved her life. So why did her heart ache so badly? That night, as rain drummed against the window, Martha heard a knock at her bedroom door. It was Caleb, still in his scrubs from the hospital. Can I sit? Of course, baby. He lowered himself into the armchair. The papers are saying you might sue the church for damages. She shook her head. I don't want their money. I want my peace. He hesitated. And Pastor Leroy? Martha looked out the window. He'll face his judgment soon enough. But I won't spend what's left of my soul hating him. Caleb exhaled softly. You always forgive too easily. No, she said gently. I forgive because I can't afford to carry poison. I did that once before, when your daddy died. It almost killed me." They sat quietly for a moment, the rain filling the silence. Then Caleb rose, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You're stronger than any of us." When he left, the room felt colder. Later that night, Micah found her still awake, folding laundry that didn't need folding. "Mama," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." She looked up. "What is it, child?" "When they arrested Pastor Leroy, Internal Affairs called me in. They said I shouldn't have been investigating off-duty. I might lose my badge." Her heart stuttered. "Micah, no." He forced a smile. "It's all right. I'd do it again. But I didn't want you to find out from the news." She walked to him slowly, placed both hands on his face, and said, "You did what was right. If they punish you for that, then their justice is smaller than God's." His eyes glistened. "You always know what to say." But when he left the room, Martha sat back down, trembling. One son almost losing his career, another dragged through public humiliation, and all because of her name. Her heart whispered, was it worth the cost? The next morning, she found Derek in the backyard, sitting on the old swing set. The dawn light painted the grass gold, and his tie hung loose around his neck. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. He shook his head. "My company put me on leave, pending an internal review. They think I helped cover up fraud because of that signature." She closed her eyes. "Lord have mercy." "I'm not worried about the job," he added quickly. "I just can't stand that people look at me the way they looked at you." She stepped closer, laid a hand on his shoulder. "Then now you understand what faith feels like when it's bruised." He swallowed hard. "You still trust people after all this?" "Always," she said. "Because someone once trusted me when I had nothing." His eyes met hers, soft, broken, healing. "You mean us?" She nodded. "I mean you." Days passed. The court case had ended, but the gossip hadn't. Martha's name might have been cleared on paper, yet whispers followed her through the grocery aisles and down church sidewalks. People she'd prayed beside for decades suddenly crossed the street when she walked by. At choir practice, the women who used to fight over who'd sit next to her now pretended to be busy with hymnals. "She's good, but you know how smoke follows fire," one of them whispered when they thought she was out of earshot. Martha said nothing. She simply kept her head bowed and her hands clasped tight, humming under her breath. But that night when she got home she cried, not loud sobs, but the quiet kind that come from a soul too tired to scream. Caleb found her sitting in the dark kitchen, hands wrapped around a cold mug of tea. "People still talking?" he asked softly. She nodded. "You'd think being innocent would be enough." He crouched beside her. "It's enough for us." Her voice cracked. "But it's not enough for me, baby. I worked my whole life to serve, and now I'm treated like a stain that won't wash out." Caleb took her hand, his eyes shining. "Then maybe it's time to start over, somewhere new." Martha shook her head. "You can't run from roots. They'll find you, even in new soil." The following Sunday, she didn't go to church. She couldn't. Instead, she walked through the old community center where she'd once fed the hungry and tutored neighborhood kids. The walls were peeling, the kitchen cold, the tables dusty. She stood in the middle of the room and whispered, what was it all for? Memories flickered, children laughing, boys fighting over basketballs, the smell of cornbread and hope. Now silence. She sank to her knees, clutching her chest as tears fell freely. "Lord, I gave everything I had. My time, my money, my love. Why does it feel like you've gone quiet?" Outside, thunder rolled. She stayed there until the storm broke, rain slashing against the windows like grief turned visible. And for the first time in years, she felt truly alone. That night, as she sat by the window watching the rain, her phone buzzed. It was a message, from an unknown number. "Unknown, Ms. Jefferson? You might not remember me. I was one of the boys you used to feed after school. My name's Jamal. I just saw the news about what happened. You saved me once when I had nothing. If you need help now, I'm here." Martha's eyes widened. She remembered him, little Jamal with the torn shoes and big laugh, the one who used to sneak extra rolls into his pockets for later. She typed back slowly. "Martha, thank you, baby. You already helped, by remembering." Seconds later came his reply. Jamal, you taught me to remember. A whole lot of us out here haven't forgotten you. She blinked, her breath catching. Then, another message popped up, this time from another unknown number. Kendra, Miss Martha? You probably don't remember me either. I used to come to your reading nights. I'm a teacher now. You gave me my first book. Then another. Tyrone, you helped my mom when she was sick. We never forgot. Then another. Dozens of messages flooded in, from men and women she hadn't seen in years. Former students, neighbors, strangers who'd eaten at her soup kitchen once and carried that kindness into their lives. Her phone vibrated non-stop, the screen glowing with light, a digital choir of love rising in the darkness. And for the first time in weeks, Martha smiled through tears. By morning, the storm had passed. The air smelled like wet earth and new beginnings. Martha stepped onto her porch wrapped in her shawl, coffee steaming in her hand. The sunrise burned orange against the horizon, painting the world gold again. Micah came out beside her, yawning. You're up early. I couldn't sleep, she said softly. But for the first time, it's not because I'm worried. He followed her gaze toward the light. You feeling better? She smiled. I remembered something. You can lose everything, your name, your home, your peace, but if one person remembers your goodness, you're never truly gone. Micah nodded, quiet. Down the street, a group of neighborhood kids ran past on their way to school, their laughter echoing. Martha watched them disappear around the corner, her heart swelling. I think I'm ready, she said. For what? Micah asked. To start again. The next morning, Martha woke before sunrise. The air was still soft, the kind that holds its breath right before a miracle. She brewed her coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened her old prayer journal. The pages were yellowed, full of scribbled hopes and weary pleas written over decades. Lord, give me strength for these boys. Lord, keep them from the streets. Lord, if I must suffer, let it mean something. She ran her finger over those words, her lips trembling. You did answer me, she whispered. Just not how I expected. She closed the book gently. Then, almost on instinct, she reached for her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years, the city community board. When the line picked up, she smiled faintly. Yes, this is Martha Jefferson. I'd like to talk about reopening the old center on Maple Street. By noon, her front yard buzzed with movement. Micah carried lumber out of his patrol car trunk. Derek hauled in boxes of paint cans, grinning like he hadn't in months. Caleb, ever the organizer, had brought a small medical kit, just in case. You sure about this, Mama? Caleb asked as he rolled up his sleeves. She nodded. This place gave life to me. Time I give life back. The boys looked at one another, and without another word, they followed her down the street. The old building stood like a ghost, cracked walls, faded murals, broken glass glittering in the weeds. But when Martha stepped onto the porch, her expression softened instead of breaking. She touched the doorway. Still here, she murmured. Just needs love again. Micah set down a toolbox. Then let's give it all we've got. And so they did. 4 days, hammers echoed and laughter returned. Derek managed the funds and supplies. Caleb coordinated volunteers. Micah handled permits and neighborhood safety. Martha cooked for everyone. Cornbread stew, laughter stirred in. The smell of hope slowly filled the air again. Word spread quickly that Miss Martha was fixing up her center again. At first, people came out of curiosity. Old church ladies pretending they were just passing by, neighbors offering to sweep the sidewalk. Then came the kids, bright-eyed, curious, hungry not just for food but for belonging. One little girl, maybe 10, tugged on Martha's sleeve. Miss Martha? My mama said you used to feed kids here before. Is it true? Martha knelt, smiling. It's true, baby. And we're going to do it again. The girl grinned. Can I help? Of course you can, Martha said. Every hand matters. By the 3rd week, the building that once looked abandoned began to glow with new paint, laughter, and life. A banner hung above the entrance. Jefferson House, a place for hope. The boys had surprised her with the name. Martha stood beneath it, speechless, her heart swelling until it hurt. You named it after me? Micah smiled. After what you taught us. Hope ain't something we find, it's something we build. The grand reopening came on a cool Saturday evening. The air smelled of barbecue and fresh paint. Strings of lights zigzagged across the courtyard, and children chased each other between tables. Reporters showed up again, but this time not for scandal. Cameras captured smiles, laughter, and a line of people waiting to shake Martha's hand. The mayor himself came, handing her a framed certificate. For decades of service and resilience, the city of Brookhaven honors Miss Martha Jefferson. She accepted it humbly, eyes shining. I didn't do it alone, she said into the microphone. 3 boys I once found in the cold grew into men who warmed this whole town. The crowd clapped, some crying openly. As she stepped down, Caleb whispered, "You were perfect." She chuckled. I just told the truth. The celebration wound down slowly. Laughter lingered like perfume in the air. As volunteers packed up chairs and children waved goodbye, Martha found herself sitting alone on the front steps of the newly restored community center. The string lights above flickered softly, their glow washing over her face. She exhaled, long, deep, grateful. That's when a shadow moved near the gate. She turned. A man stood there, frail, hesitant. For a moment, she didn't recognize him. Then the streetlight caught his face. Eli Barnes. Her breath hitched. Lord. He looked older, thinner, humbled, eyes heavy with shame. He took off his cap and held it against his chest. I didn't think you'd want to see me, he said softly. Martha rose slowly, every muscle trembling. They let you out? Early release. For good behavior. I came to say something. She folded her arms. You already said plenty in that courtroom. I know, he whispered. And I was wrong. About everything. I told myself it was just business, that I was helping the church survive. But the truth is, I was just greedy. I used people who trusted me, you most of all. And I can't carry it anymore. He looked down, voice cracking. I lost everything. My family, my home, my name. But I had to come and tell you, I'm sorry. Martha's heart pounded. For a long time, she said nothing. The silence stretched between them, thick with years of pain. Then finally she spoke. You hurt me, Eli. You took my good name and dragged it through dirt I spent a lifetime cleaning. You made my son suffer. I know, he whispered. And I'll never forgive myself. She stepped closer, eyes fierce and tear-filled. Good. But I will. He looked up, startled. I forgive you, Eli, she said, voice steady. Not because you deserve it, but because I do. I won't let what you did chain me another day. Eli covered his face, sobbing. I don't know how to live with that kind of mercy. Then start by living better, she said gently. That's how you honor forgiveness. She turned to leave, but then paused and looked back. You hungry? He blinked. Ma'am. She smiled faintly. There's stew left inside. I don't waste food. Come eat. And just like that, the woman he once tried to destroy offered him a seat at her table. Inside, the boys tensed when they saw Eli follow her in. Micah stepped forward. Mama, what is he doing here? Martha lifted a hand. He came to say sorry. Derek frowned. And you let him in? I did, she said firmly. Because grace means nothing if it only lives in church. Caleb's eyes softened. Mama. She turned to them all. You 3 saved my life once. But what good is a saved life if I use it to hate? The best way to thank God for freedom is to pass it on. They fell silent, watching as she handed Eli a bowl of stew. He took it with shaking hands, whispering, Thank you. She smiled. Eat. Tomorrow's a new day. Later that night, long after everyone had gone, Martha sat by the window of the center's kitchen, humming a tune from her childhood. It was a hymn her mother used to sing while cooking, soft, steady, full of longing. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet except for crickets and the distant hum of city lights. Derek, Caleb, and Micah stood at the doorway, watching her silently. She did it, Derek said quietly. What? Micah asked. Turned pain into purpose. Caleb nodded. Like she always does. They watched her for a long moment, this small woman with silver in her hair, who had carried them, saved them, and now taught them what forgiveness truly looked like. She looked up, noticing them, and smiled. "What are you three doing staring at me like ghosts?" Micah grinned. "Just remembering who taught us everything we know." She laughed softly. "Then remember this too, love's not about never breaking. It's about choosing to mend." They stepped inside, surrounding her in a hug that felt like sunrise. And for the first time since the trial, Martha felt something deeper than freedom, peace. Could you forgive someone who nearly destroyed your life? What would forgiveness look like for you? Share your truth. Someone reading might be standing at that same crossroad. 3 months passed. Jefferson House thrived like a second sunrise. Every Saturday the courtyard filled with laughter, the smell of stew, and songs that spilled into the street. The city that once turned its back on Martha now came to her doorstep with open hands. Then one crisp morning, Derek arrived holding a letter. His face was pale. "Mama," he said quietly, "you need to read this." Martha wiped her hands on her apron, unfolded the paper, and frowned. It was a notice from a development corporation. They'd bought up several properties around the block, including the lot beside the community center. They planned to build luxury condos. And they wanted her land. Martha's eyes scanned the words, "We request that Jefferson House vacate within 60 days. Her heart dropped. Caleb slammed his palm on the table. "No way. This is the same kind of greed that ruined people like you before." Micah read over his shoulder. "They're trying to push her out legally this time. Look, they're citing zoning violations." Martha sank into a chair. "After everything we fixed, after everything we built." But Derek's voice cut through the despair. "We're not letting them take it. Not this time." Within days, the three brothers became a storm. Micah used his badge to gather documents showing the developer's history of bribery. Caleb reached out to the city's health department and verified that every renovation at Jefferson House met code. Derek, the strategist, started calling lawyers, investors, and journalists. Meanwhile, Martha did what she always did. She prayed and cooked for the volunteers who filled her hall every night. "Let love be louder than fear," she told them. But fear was stubborn. One evening, as Martha locked the front gate, 2 suited men from the development company approached her. "Miss Jefferson," one said smoothly, "you're an admirable woman. But this is business. We can offer you a generous buyout, enough to retire comfortably." She smiled sadly. "You think I built this to sell it?" He sighed. "Everyone has a price." She met his gaze. "Then you don't know love." Micah stepped out from behind the gate, voice firm. "That's enough. You need to leave." They exchanged a tense stare before the men turned and walked away, muttering about sentimentality. Martha exhaled slowly. "Lord, keep me strong. They'll come harder next time." The next morning, Derek held a press conference outside the center. Reporters crowded the sidewalk. Behind him stood Martha and her sons, along with dozens of community members holding signs that read, "Hope lives here. Hands off Jefferson House." Cameras clicked. Derek spoke into the microphones. 30 years ago, this woman took in 3 homeless boys and changed their lives. Now, she's changed hundreds more. We won't let greed erase that legacy." The crowd erupted. Martha stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. "I was almost destroyed by lies once. Not again. This place doesn't belong to me. It belongs to every soul that found a home inside these walls." Reporters asked questions. Children clapped. Old friends cheered. By evening, the news spread statewide. Donations poured in. Lawyers offered free counsel. And something miraculous happened. The city council announced an emergency session to review Jefferson House's zoning status. A week later, the hearing took place in a packed city hall. Martha sat between her boys, hands folded. Across the room, the developer's lawyers whispered confidently. The council chair called for statements. The developer's attorney began, smooth as oil. "While we respect Miss Jefferson's contributions, her building stands on a parcel designated for redevelopment. The law is clear." Then Derek stood. "The law also protects historical sites that serve public good. We have 3,000 signatures declaring Jefferson House a community heritage center. Murmurs rippled through the room. The lawyer scoffed. Emotional appeals don't override statutes. Maybe not, said Caleb, rising with a folder. But medical records show this center provided free care for over 120 families during the pandemic. That's public service. Micah followed, his badge catching the light. And internal police documents confirm the neighborhood's crime rate dropped 40% since the center reopened. That's public safety. The council members exchanged looks. Finally, the chair turned to Martha. Miss Jefferson, do you have anything to say before we deliberate? Martha stood slowly. Her knees ached, but her voice didn't waver. Martha, I'm no lawyer. I'm just a woman who opened her door. I didn't know those 3 boys would grow into the men you see beside me. I didn't know that feeding one hungry child would one day feed a city. But I do know this, a building can be torn down. Hope can't. You can't bulldoze love. You can't evict grace. Silence filled the hall. One councilwoman wiped a tear. Another nodded faintly. The chair cleared his throat. We'll take a short recess. As they exited, Martha's hands trembled. Derek put an arm around her. Caleb whispered, whatever happens, you already won. She smiled weakly. Winning isn't about walls. It's about hearts that stay open. The council chamber buzzed as people filed back in. The air felt electric, thick with anticipation and faith battling fear. Martha sat perfectly still, hands clasped. Her sons flanked her like sentinels. The chair cleared his throat. After reviewing the presented evidence and community testimonies, the council has reached a decision. Every breath in the room seemed to pause. Effective immediately, he continued, the property known as Jefferson House is to be designated an official community heritage site under city protection. No development or demolition will be permitted. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by cheers that shook the walls. Caleb threw his arms around Martha. Mama, you did it. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. We did it. Micah lifted his hands to the ceiling and shouted, Glory! Reporters surged forward as cameras flashed. Martha wiped her eyes, smiled, and whispered, Thank you, Lord. Thank you for giving my babies back to me, and for giving me back my purpose. That night, Jefferson House glowed brighter than ever. The courtyard overflowed with neighbors, volunteers, and families. Kids danced to music that pulsed through the warm night air. Martha stood by the steps, watching Derek, Caleb, and Micah laugh with the crowd. She could see every age of them in that moment, the lost boys she'd fed, the men they'd become, and the love that had carried them through everything. When Derek saw her watching, he walked over with a glass of lemonade. You okay, Mama? She smiled. More than okay. I used to pray for God to send angels to protect me. Took me a while to realize he sent 3, and they just happened to eat all my food. He laughed, shaking his head. We learned from the best. Then Caleb joined them, holding up a folder. Guess what? Donations came in from all over the country after the news broke. We can finally expand, maybe a health clinic, maybe a learning center. Martha's eyes widened. The dream keeps growing. Micah grinned. Just like your love did. As the night deepened, Martha slipped inside the quiet building for a moment of solitude. She wandered through the halls, touching each wall as if blessing it. Her gaze fell on the old photo board by the main office. There she was, younger, stronger, surrounded by kids she'd once fed and tutored. And right in the center, a faded photo of 3 small boys smiling with bowls of soup. Derek, Caleb, and Micah. She traced their faces with her fingertip, whispering, My boys, my miracles. Behind her, a soft voice said, Miss Martha. She turned. It was Eli Barnes again, standing at the door with a small donation envelope. I heard about the ruling, he said quietly. I wanted to help. It isn't much. Martha studied him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward, took his hand, and pressed the envelope back into it. No, baby. You keep it. Start fresh. You already helped more than you know, by showing that people can change. He swallowed hard. You really believe that? She smiled, her eyes wet. I built my whole life on it. He nodded, tears shining, and left quietly. Outside, fireworks cracked above the rooftops, bursts of color lighting the night. The crowd counted down the seconds to midnight. A new year, a new chapter. Martha stepped onto the porch as her sons joined her. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the sky blaze with light. Derek wrapped an arm around her. You ever think 30 years ago, when you found us in the rain, it would end like this? She laughed softly. Baby, it's not ending. It's just beginning. Caleb leaned in. You know, you didn't just save us. You taught us what family really means. Micah nodded. Family isn't blood. It's the people who stay when the world walks away. Martha blinked away tears. Then I guess I've been rich all along. They stood there together, for souls who had weathered storms, betrayal, prison walls, and public judgment, now basking in the glow of redemption and peace. The fireworks faded, leaving only the stars. Martha looked up and whispered, "Thank you for giving me back everything I thought I lost." Then she turned to her sons. Now go dance, before this old lady steals all the attention again. They laughed and obeyed, disappearing into the sea of people, leaving her smiling beneath the soft hum of the lights. For the first time in years, she felt weightless, not because her burdens were gone, but because love had carried them all. 10 years passed. The city had changed, taller buildings, new lights, new names, but at the corner of Maple and 3rd, Jefferson House still stood, sturdy and bright. The paint had faded in places, but the laughter inside never did. Children still came after school for hot meals. Struggling parents came for counseling and job help. Elders came for company and song. And every Wednesday morning, like clockwork, an elderly woman with silver hair and a steady smile sat by the big window, watching the world wake up. Martha Jefferson. Her joints ached now. Her steps were slower. But her heart? Still fierce. Still generous. The city had declared her an honorary citizen years ago. Schools had written essays about her story. Yet, when people came to thank her, she always said the same thing. Don't thank me. Thank the 3 boys who never stopped believing. Each of her sons had grown into pillars of the community. Derek, still in the corporate world, used his position to create scholarship programs for underprivileged youth. Every year, he sent a dozen young people to college in Martha's name. Caleb, now a respected doctor, opened a free clinic inside Jefferson House, offering care to anyone who walked through the door. He always said, "Healing people is how I say thank you." Micah, now a police captain, led reform initiatives that rebuilt trust between officers and the community. He often quoted his mother's favorite line, "Justice without compassion is just power dressed in pride." Despite their demanding lives, every Sunday the 3 brothers returned home. They'd cook, tease one another, and fill the house with the kind of laughter that could shake off decades of pain. And Martha, sitting at the head of the table, would look at them and think, "These boys were my miracle, but maybe I was theirs too." One bright spring afternoon, Jefferson House held a celebration, 30 years since its rebirth. The courtyard overflowed with families, music, and bright balloons. On stage, Derek adjusted the microphone. Today we dedicate the new wing of Jefferson House, a learning center for children and a library for anyone chasing knowledge. And we dedicate it to the woman who taught us that love changes everything.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.